Hi, I'm Rigger. This is your rant. Today we're following up on the insanity of episode 6. The title and thumbnail say it all as clear as I possibly can, so we're here to discuss it. Let's cover it immediately. Because I really think the cat is the crown. Literally. I'm actually pretty sure of it after what we've gone over this last episode. There were quite a few things that raised my suspicions, but they were pretty much solidified after what we just saw. And specifically, one of the biggest tip-offs is that it desperately wants to get to Remnant. The cat made sure to say it wants to get to Remnant. That is its goal. That's what it wanted from Alex. And according to the cat, Alex was supposed to do this, take it through the door, but betrayed him. So, let's look at that. That tells us two things. One is that would be consistent with the other relics, being hidden in vault-like places on Remnant, but don't have autonomy. And I feel that's what would happen here. That if the cat were to be removed from the Ever After, it would actually become the crown again, physically, back to being a relic. Very similar to how you usually need a maiden to open the door and take the relic out. The maiden doesn't have to take it. Same thing here. In this sort of magical space, someone has to physically take the relic out. It can't leave on its own. Because what really raised my suspicions is that it's not just that it happened once, it's happening again. That it very much seems that that was the cat's goal again, to try this with Team RWBY, which really points to something that I think will happen, which is this will come up by the end of the volume. They're going to have to choose if they want to take the cat with them or not. That situation will occur. Just narratively it makes sense. You don't bring up a scenario like that, a what-if scenario, if it's never going to come into play, if they're never going to have to deal with it. Which naturally has the following question, well, what if you did? Ignoring the crown thing, what if you took the cat back to Remnant? Why are we bringing this up? Seemingly, the cat can teleport, it can split itself up into parts, it has changing heart magic, and all these other crazy things, but it's not exactly a friend that we can trust. And what would it do on Remnant? How would it play into our story? I've seen people talk about it changing Salem's heart, which I don't know about that. But other than that one, sort of idea, it has no role. It would do nothing. There's no point to bringing it back to Remnant. We wouldn't get anything from it unless there was something more to it. But what it does do is it actually solves a major issue if it were the crown. Not major issue. It brings up an issue. Before I go onto the evidence about the cat itself, I want to pose this to you. Stop thinking about this in the narrative of the story and pull yourself out. Imagine you're writing. How much longer do you think RWBY will actually run? The entire show? There's been speculation it will only be 10 volumes. Some say it's planned for 12 or 14 or whatever. But also, who knows what changes over time with contracts, the company changing, editing the ideas you have, redrafting things, all those real-world things that get in the way of doing whatever you'd like. Thinking on it, rather than doing another vault chase back to Beacon, especially if we do one again in Vacuo, after already doing 2, that's repetitive and it's annoying. And also it means they have to answer that more challenging setup that Oz alluded to. And it's way easier for them not to do it that way, but to do it in an unexpected way. This is the get-out-of-jail-free way. They don't have to figure out where the vault is hidden, or find a way for Cinder to find out and get there and open the door, or any of that stuff. They don't have to make the vault extra and crazy to live up to that promise and expectation. Instead, you can circumvent that. And more importantly, it expedites the end of the show. It expedites things coming into play quicker. Rather than, as I said, the big vault chase and finding the crazy special vault and all that stuff. Instead, it dumps Team RWBY back into the world with the crown in hand and nowhere to hide it. It's outside the vault. Just like when they had the lamp, they have to keep it safe. They also have to consider using it. And Salem and the bad guys can get it, which leads us towards the end, with they unite the relics. It saves us all the trouble and changes up the narrative. And also, considering the crown's supposed powers, using it could be very, very interesting, especially for the good guys. Then, the only one left is the sword, and you can do a vault chase for that, or even, it could be out of the vault by the time we get back. You have no idea what they've been doing while you were gone. Speeding through another relic is kind of appealing to change up the formula. And it keeps the story moving towards the endgame, which feels like something they might be trying to get to relatively soon. Just think about the things that are going on right now. They feel very endgame. Big puzzles and big questions are starting to be answered. We're getting more summer teasers. We got the bee kiss. We have teasers of possibly Roman making his appearance and maybe the end of Neo, and we have crazy things happening with Jean. All these things that you might start doing towards the end of the story where things start wrapping up and you need to start answering the questions. Also, before I continue, because I know it's definitely going to come up, I don't think this has to do with Alex and Lewis necessarily. As far as we can tell from Jean's retelling, the cat was here when they were here. So it either, fell with them because they had the crown, let's say, and then immediately became the cat and went through this whole transformation and established itself to join them, and no one saw it, which seems so unlikely, or it was here before that. And considering that one of the tellings about the crown is a fairy tale, meaning we have no idea when it was told, and the only other time the crown has been referenced being seen was during this, which was the Great War of Remnant, World of Remnant flashback thing. Whenever that occurred is the last time it was actually seen, assuming this is the same crown, which we are going to assume because it just makes sense. So first off, before details, I want to say I don't think it's the whole ever after that is the crown, or a few things people have been saying, or that even Ozpin made all this somehow, the way to get the relic was you had to do this full test of going through this whole story. That seems really extreme, and also far too big and powerful for him. Look, Salem and him were equal level mages when they fought, and she isn't creating pocket dimensions, and if she did, you'd start calling her out for being way too powerful. And maybe I'll end up being wrong, but it's just too much. Also, it's the idea that the relic of choice exists in a place where the whole point is people don't have a choice. They have a set role. It kind of goes against the creation of this place. However, if the crown wasn't the whole place, it was just one resident because it was being kept here, that I'm a lot more open to. Now, I don't know if the beacon vault can actually get to here, or if it isn't just empty wherever it is. That the trick is you would have to go get the staff, know to ask it to make a gateway to here, just to get the crown, making it basically near impossible, except for this crazy route we went on. But if you were Ozpin setting this up, you'd be like, I hid the crown off-world, using a different relic to do it, and even if you got that relic, you'd have to know to ask it to do the specific thing you would think it near impossible to get to. If you're asking me, I would say that Ozpin probably asked the staff of basically what Team RWBY asked when they asked for their portal, a place like the vaults, something similar, and he made a gate here. This is some kind of pocket dimension, and the idea actually sits with how Ozpin was reincarnated, because when he spoke to the God of Light, as I've mentioned this before, they weren't in the afterlife. He said he's come from the afterlife and he would like to go back there when he's talking to him. But the God of Light says they are between realms. It's possibly they're standing in ever after before it was made, that the gods left the world behind, went to this place between realms, a new little play area to make something new. Their next micro project, and that tells Oz that it's possible that he should look for places like this. The one point I concede, though, is I do not know why the crown has become a cat. If it's something to do with the magic of the relics interacting with the magic of this land, which probably was never meant to happen, whether literally the crown ascended or was remade when it came here, because it does have a consciousness, even though it isn't a living being, it is a conscious being, it is have a being inside, possibly, like the Jinn and everything else. I know the way that they say the crown works, you wouldn't think so, but that may not be exactly true. We'll cover that in a minute. There's also the chance that the spirit inside was a cat, and this is the spirit inside being given form, and the crown sort of internalized, rather than the other way around that we're used to on Remnant. It's backwards. The cat is on the outside, the crown is inside. Because we had the ultra-feminine Jinn and the ultra-masculine Ambrosius, and while these tools were said to be for mankind, doesn't mean that all the spirits inside have to be humanoid. And we have covered the extremes of sort of both sexes in representation, so there's a chance we went for something totally different. And there is a chance even that putting the crown on, the one who presents your choice to you is this cat, who explains context, perhaps. Keep in mind that so far the story we've heard of the crown with the king is just that, a story. It may not exactly look like that, and it may not function exactly like that either. That's only what we've been told, and as we've seen, when it comes to these fairy tales that have been passed down, for instance, The Girl in the Tower, sure, it tells some of the truth, we assume, but we don't know all the details, and it definitely doesn't tell us everything around it, so we can't just blindly trust them. They are just stories. So, this is the crown we see in the story, but this is the crown we see from the gods, so this is the one I would put more faith in, its shape, that kind of thing. Also, to be fair, we saw this one from the World of Remnant long ago, but that one basically doesn't count, it's just a representation of a crown. My focus goes to this one, of course. Now, we assume we know the colour scheme, because we would think that these big diamond shapes here would be that classic relic blue, pretty much like they are in the story. These three big blue diamond shapes with one extra on the back of the head. What a recognizable pattern that would be. Like these three big blue diamond shapes on the cat's head and the one on the back of its head. These spots even glow blue. Literally an exact match. That right there is enough for me. Once I realized that that very distinct pattern is there, even on the back of the head, that was enough to settle it for me on its own. And like I said, they even glow. While we haven't seen the other relics go dark like these spots do, it does match their illuminated behavior when they pulse, etc., and when they're active. This makes the markings also more than just markings. It's not just a pattern, they have life to them, almost as if there's something more to them. Because also initially you take the design to be a checkerboard, but also they are just covered in blue diamonds when you stop thinking of it that way. This also would actually explain why it's so desperate to get to Remnant, even if it doesn't really realize what it is. It doesn't belong here. It was crafted to be an item to serve Remnant and the people of Remnant by the gods. It was created for that purpose, and it can't achieve that purpose. It was made for another world. The vaults are one thing, they're sort of part of the deal, but it's been removed from that even further. And boy, if the Ever After isn't a place about things wanting to fulfill their purpose. So it all feeds together. But also, it makes sense with the Curious Cat's nature. From what we know of the crown, it shows you a choice you'll one day have to make. That's what we're at least told. Now, while that doesn't entirely fit exactly with how the cat acts, it does speak to the cat wanting to know everything about everybody. Whereas the Relic of Knowledge has all the knowledge in the world, it knows everything. The Relic of Choice wants to find out everything and what people will choose. It needs all the information, especially the information from Remnant. Now, it probably doesn't need that to do its magical thing when you put it on your head, but it would be to the character inside it. It has developed a thirst for learning, for entertainment as well, it says as much, for education and entertainment. It's almost like it's trying to profile you, but for everything. Every single detail about you. But to do that, it has to know everything from what you want in your future, what your hopes and dreams are, and what your favourite dessert is, and everything in between. As if the character were trying to build a perfect image of you, therefore able to predict every choice you'll make. And that especially comes out when there's information about Remnant, where it's meant to be. But let's talk about magic. With all the details of the relics, we learn new rules. We never knew them going in, but every time we've come across a relic, there has been things we needed to know, extra little caveats, like only 3 questions for Jinn every 100 years, or the staff can only do one thing at a time. And the crown may have its own rules too, and possibly different subsections of its powers. We don't know much about it. But something I couldn't shake is the connection between the crown showing you a choice in the future and the cat making people here choose different choices with the giving some of his heart thing. It almost seems like he's taking away their choice to get his way, and I wonder if it's some sort of perhaps corruption of the relic, an evolution of the power, a detail of the power we didn't know, or something else we don't know about how things have evolved here, or if it has even been through some sort of remaking process to alter its powers. It also makes me think of other things that the cat does, like its teleporting and its body splitting. As crazy as it sounds, has it gained a mastery over the concept of choice, especially in this place? It can go anywhere it chooses, it can physically split when it chooses, it can fly when it chooses, and it can make people choose things that seemingly they wouldn't usually choose. Very curious indeed. But most of all, the cat has a choice, which sets it apart from everything here in Ever After, seemingly. Everyone else here has their role. And Jean says the cat has a role, and even it sort of plays into saying it has some kind of role, but how much can we trust that, and how much is that it has some sort of effect from being here? Because no matter how you cut it, one thing that sets the cat apart is it has extreme amounts of autonomy for Ever After. It goes where it wants, it does what it wants, it changes people how it wants. It has a choice. It is choice in this land of roles and rules. But this neatly brings me around to the colour scheme. We've addressed the blue, but what about the purple? Well, I mean, you know where I'm going with the purple, but I wanted to run an idea past you, something I've thought about for a long time before any of this happened. I know we've seen this crown presented as goldish twice, but also you were saying a king has a crown for a story in both of them. As you probably would, it'd probably make it gold too. I know we've seen the relics look like this, but I've always believed that with the creation of man and the relics, we are told over and over again, the brothers are equal. They did this together. It was their joint project. Just because the God of Darkness was the one that blew everyone up and Oz talked to the God of Light when he gave him the relics, that doesn't mean that they're not both together on this. They left together and the relics will call them both back. They are both in on this and they both contributed to making mankind and the qualities presented in the relics. So we have to remember, we have to give credit to the God of Darkness, and I have always thought that the 4 qualities of mankind, 2 came from the God of Light and 2 came from the God of Darkness. Humanity was their equal share idea, and if I were to assign them, it would actually be how it's rolled out so far. That the God of Light, with his gold color scheme, obviously, gives creation. It's his thing. He has the gifts of creation, he basks in creation, we know this. And knowledge, for something to learn and grow. You know, to know is to create. To learn is to build. These sort of things. That makes sense as his contributions to humanity. But the 2 we haven't seen are the other 2 qualities that actually would go with the God of Darkness. Obviously, destruction, it's his thing. He is the opposite of creation, and destruction is a powerful tool for people as well. And also choice. Because choice creates chaos and uncertainty. Choice creates chance. Choice adds things into the mix. You could choose to not do good things. It doesn't make you do good things. And it's not necessarily that the God of Darkness wants bad, but it's fair. It's the chaos of the world. Very much in line with that brother's values. So I think the crown is the God of Darkness's contribution as well as the sword, and we haven't seen those. And also, you can see that even from the story, the crown has some quite haunting and terrible effects with the people that use it, and that might be one of the reasons why, that it didn't come from the best guy. And I think that's why the cat is purple and blue. Blue for the relic, but purple for the God of Darkness. And in fact, I say to you that the presentation of the crowns we've seen so far might be incorrect. We assume that all the relics are gold and blue because those are the 2 we've seen. But if this theory stands up, then those 2 were from the gold guy and the blue is the relic bit. So there's a chance that even though it's been presented as gold because we were talking about kings and crowns, what if the crown didn't look like this and actually looked like this? And, by extension, the sword would as well. I think that looks really cool and is different and would be surprising when we saw it. But also, it doesn't have to be the way. Even if they are just gold and blue, it doesn't mean they aren't part of his contribution and it just has a singular aesthetic. And I wanted to bring up something else too I was thinking about. You know the Fairy Tales Remnant? I know that book has existed for a while, but why did we get it animated now? What was the point of that? And especially the crown story. Why are we reintroducing the crown to the audience before this volume starts? Just to remind them it exists? Maybe, but it seems more likely that, hey, remember this thing? Because we're gonna bring it up sooner than you think. You know, introduce that idea in the Fairy Tales book before we dive into the fairy tale, and we might end up getting it on the way, even though we weren't expecting it. And if you remember, in that tale, what does the mysterious man who gives the crown to the king look like? You know, he's a faunus guy, right? Oh yeah, he looks like this. Does that perhaps remind you of anyone? Like, I'm not saying that this tale is completely true or even happened at all, although the other tales we've seen do seem to have some root of truth. So if this was passed down through time, there's a chance that this has become a big horned faunus man, but actually it's just an allusion to the fact that it came from the God of Darkness, that the crown was a gift from the horned man. Also, if one of the brothers was going to put non-human spirits inside of the relics, I would leave it to the God of Darkness to do something like that, to not put a humanoid shape in them. It seems more something that he would do, especially with the way his creations are. Maybe the destruction one is a big mean dog. That would be cool. Or a dragon. Let's go with a dragon. So while this is a bit of an all over the place quote-unquote theory, I had to sort of pile this together to add up that, yes, there isn't a whole lot of, like, really interconnected pieces of evidence, but there's so many little bits here that when I put them all together, I'm becoming more and more certain that this is a thing. And the cat just also reminds me of the gods, like on a quick level. See, the cat has no outline, and as such, the lines that like define it when it's overlapping itself to create depth are these white lines. The gods aren't exactly the same as that because they had to make a new way of doing things to make this cat, but it's the closest we've seen color scheme wise in the show. So while I can't say I can definitely explain all this, I can't tell you why all the magic is happening the way it happened, or why the crown is a cat here and it has seemingly various powers. Even though I can't completely tell you why all that would be, I can say that its color scheme makes me think of it exactly. The behavior certainly plays into ideas of choice, and its incredibly specific patterns and the fact that they glow in the exact same positions as they are on every depiction of the crown we've seen so far, and its strong desire to go to Remnant really indicate that this thing is the crown, and they're gonna take it with them when they leave. Combine that with its seeming control over other people's choice, so that's at least to do with choice, and its thirst for information about anything and everything, and my sights are firmly locked on the cat being the crown, and it's going back to Remnant with Team RWBY. That's also surely why it interrupted Herb, just for the end here. Not for RWBY's sake because it cares, but because the visit to Herb, we are told, is one of the things that really changed Alex. It doesn't sound like she was the greatest person, but Jean said after she went to Herb, she really changed and she stopped trusting everyone, double-crossed everyone, and that included the cat at the end. That she didn't take the cat with her as she had promised. So, seeing another chance to leave Remnant, that is why the cat interrupted. The cat has a second chance to escape and surely doesn't want the same thing to happen to RWBY as happened to Alex. Because presumably he has a much better shot of escaping with RWBY like this, especially if he had got them on side and thought they were friends. That even might be why he sent Herb away, because that way Herb is going to have to get fixed and changed, and that could take however long, and it means there's much less chance of them running back over him again. Like if RWBY had left and come back. It removes that risk. Just take the risk away by sending it to Ever After. Now, RWBY has less of a chance to change in whatever way Herb influenced Alex. So, that's pretty much it. The patterning, once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. And then it just made it clear how bored the cat was and how it wants more than anything to go to Remnant. All this together, couldn't separate it. It's the crown, it's the curious crown. But that's all for now. Until next time, my name is Rigger. Hope you have a wonderful day. And I hope I did alright.